Hello, lovely people. Oh my gosh. Okay, so today I am delighted to introduce you to a new friend of mine. We just chatted for the last 25 minutes. This is Dr. Christy Matusiak. She is a holistic chiropractor and mom to three boys. And she is basically what I'm learning about her is that she is an alchemizer of chaos, which is totally what we need in the world. We'll dive into all the depths, of course, as we always do. But first off, I just want to thank y'all for listening, and I want to thank you so much, Christy, Dr. Christy, for being with us today.
Well, Sarah, thank you for having me. This has already been a pleasure, so I can't wait to get into it more.
Yay! All right. So I always tell folks whenever they come onto these discussions to just imagine we're in a hot tub under the stars, having a deep conversation about God and the universe and life. And so let's just imagine that and take a couple deep breaths. And really just feel into this question that we all ask ourselves on the regular. What is my soul's purpose in this moment right now, in this body, in this incarnation, on the planet, given everything going on around me? What is your soul's purpose?
Well, in this moment, by the way, that was a beautiful visualization, so thank you. Right now, in this moment, my soul's purpose is what I feel like it's been for the last year-ish or so, and it is in that alchemizing the chaos bit. So, as you said, I'm a mom to three boys, and I live with chaos every day, and I try very, very deeply to be the eye in the storm in my own world. And my passion and purpose is to reach every mom and honestly human being out there that's trying to navigate the chaos in their own lives, whether it's through motherhood or parenthood of some kind, or just their work and their relationships. I feel like we're all surrounded by chaos of some kind, and we can channel some of that energy differently. I've got a lot of different techniques that I use and do in my office to kind of work through that, so to speak. But that's my soul's purpose at this particular juncture.
Thank goddess for that, man. I really feel like this is a topic that you can kind of be on the surface with and talk about sort of like organizational systems in your household and how to parent three sons
Mm-hmm.
while you run a business. We could like, and all of that's so important.
Mm-hmm.
There's also some really deep stuff here, scorpionic depths about like order and chaos, chaos and beauty, and what chaos really is, and what it means to alchemize chaos into beauty. We were just talking before I hit record. I see the universe as a sacred geometry that or that wants to be a universe that wants to be a sacred geometry if we can just not fight it, if we can just kind of be in our surrendered flow. I wonder, how does flow and surrender work for a mom of three who also works as a holistic doctor?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can answer that in a couple different ways from the personal side of things, but also from the business side of things. Like you said, there's a lot of tangible ways and strategies that I could list off on how to be an entrepreneur while being a parent at the same time. And ultimately, at the end of the day, whatever area of life we're talking about, just like you said, it's being in the flow. I actually just had a conversation this morning with my coach about this very thing, and I feel like when we're passionate and ambitious and want to create whatever we want to create in the world, we have this energy and this fight amongst us where we want to just save the world and go as much as we can. And she reminded me that if I'm pushing upstream, if I'm fighting that current a bit too much, it's going to be a lot harder than if we just let go and let the flow of life carry us where we're meant to be. And that can apply to parenting, it can apply in your work and relationships and all across the board. But ultimately, if we just let go, I mean, it's even like childbirth. I mean, you said you had a son, like, you know, childbirth is the ultimate expression of complete and total surrender when you've got virtually no idea what's happening to your body, how long it's going to take, how much it's going to hurt. You just have to completely and totally let go. And that can be challenging and scary for some people. I know it is for me sometimes.
Wow, yeah. Yeah, I mean that the metaphor of childbirth is huge because that's creating life. That's creation.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
so the very act of creation necessitates a certain amount of total surrender amidst total unknowing.
Yeah. And in the medical model, the medical model tries to control that process. They try to control every little bit of it. They want to schedule your date. They want to give you the medications for induction, or sometimes they even want to schedule a C-section. And of course, there are some times and places for those things when there's serious emergencies. And when there's not an emergency, I often just recommend, when the baby's ready, when your body is ready, life will present itself in the most beautiful way possible. Just don't mess with the system.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, so that brings up the medical model. And that's one of those, like, there's so many systems that I believe are ready for a total breakthrough and a total shift. And if we don't make shifts in many of these systems, if not all of them, then there's some not so lovely things that could occur on the planet, like environmentally, I think the education system, but the medical system is a huge one that if it doesn't shift soon, I mean, like our microbiomes are all messed up. There's, we've got cancer, we've got all sorts of like chronic health issues that are going on related to people's guts um, and by that I mean tummies. And um, if yeah, I'm curious, like as somebody who is a holistic chiropractor doctor, how do you see that shift in the medical paradigm happening?
Yeah. Well, like I shared with you before we jumped on here, I've been in the medical or the holistic headspace for virtually my whole life before it was even a thing. I remember graduating high school and going out into, applying for colleges, and people asked me, "What are you majoring in? What are your focus?" And I said, "Well, I want to be involved holistically speaking, meaning mind, body, spirit, it's all connected." I majored in biology and psychology, and people thought that at that time, why would I do that? Because those things aren't at all related. And to me, it was common sense. Of course, the mind, body, spirit connection is now undeniable in this paradigm shift that I feel like that's happened in the last decade or so. But back when I was in college, this was not a thing. And I feel like, especially now in the last couple of years since the pandemic and everything, people are recognizing how important their health is, and that no one's going to do it for you. You know, our health is our responsibility. You're not going to be able to go to your doctor and say, all right, what's exactly what I need to do for my own health? Because our bodies are so different. My system is different than your system, who's different from your neighbors. And at least in my work, we get so specific to what each individual needs that we have to be responsible for our own stuff.
Yeah, so moving away from sort of this like protocol or this like one size
Mm-hmm.
fits all medical model, here's what we do for this particular diagnosis, and instead looking at everybody as a unique individual that has a very unique sort of key to unlocking the flow of their own body's health.
Right. And that's what we do, at least in my own practice, like through muscle testing. Are you familiar with muscle testing, Sarah?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do a lot of muscle testing in my
Kinesiology.
practice. Exactly, which gets very specific into what each individual person needs. So um, it's that sense of whether you need a chiropractic adjustment in this moment to help your body fuel its energy and nervous system function at the best, most optimal level, or if you need a supplement, an herb, a nutrient, if you just need to take something out of your diet that's causing you toxicity, or mentally, emotionally, spiritually, if there's some energy there from your relationships or from your work or something in your life that's causing you distress, it's going to be reflected in your body. And so just taking that holistic, broad, three-dimensional, at least three or more dimensional approach to each individual person, I feel like that's part of the paradigm shift that I've just intuitively been in my whole life. And I'm grateful that I can call it my profession now.
And it does require so much self-responsibility to bring that back in because,
Mm-hmm.
to people so much the medical model since, God knows how long, decades, hundreds of years, people have been so reliant on somebody to tell them, like, here's your diagnosis and here's your prescription. And in this case, now with this new paradigm and with what you offer, like, I actually have to realize that it is my own energetic behavior, emotional behavior, physical behavior that has an impact on what happens in my body. Not that we want to blame the victim, so to speak, but we're actually transitioning completely away from a victim mentality. There's no such
Hmm.
thing as blaming the victim. There's just self-responsibility.
Right. And recognizing that everything that we put out there is coming back to us in some way, right? Of course, we're pretty familiar with that concept, but from the standpoint of how our body manifests disease, something that happened when we were 7 that we never fully processed through and got rid of can be impacting our cells till this day. And if we don't do something, whether on an energetic plane or on a structural plane or nutritionally, like I said, everything impacts everything. That one incident or one trauma from your birth or from your 7-year-old or from whatever can impact your hormones, can impact your digestion, can impact your level of resiliency to contracting infections as an adult. And there's so much there that is so specific to each individual person's, like somebody comes in to my office with eczema. Okay, you have this rash. Where's it stemming from? Sometimes it's a simple allergy that you just need to remove dairy or wheat or something from your diet. But other times it's a protection. Like, if you think of it energetically, you're trying to repel the world away from you in a sense. And so if we dig a little bit deeper, there's so many reasons why we can manifest stuff in our bodies. Um, and that's where I just love coming at it from that perspective, because there's so much deeper healing work that we can do than what's on the surface.
Wow. So when you work with people, you are in the Chicago area and you
Yeah.
tend to work in person, but you can do some of that. It sounds like some of that stuff you can do remotely. I don't know if you can do muscle testing remotely, if that's possible. Or like if we were to have a session and I were to tell you about eczema, for instance, like you would be able to help me through that even over a Zoom call.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely prefer in person. Just personally, I like the energetic connection of being in person with people. But I'm also grateful for Zoom because it can allow us to meet like this, and it allows me to help people all over the place. And I can do it remotely for sure. A lot of it is um, trust based and making sure that the person feels comfortable with being remotely tested like this. But for those who are pretty open minded and recognize the power of energy, I can do it anywhere.
Amazing. So can you tell us a little bit about your book?
Yeah,
Yeah, tell us about that.
it's called
Coordinating the
Coordinating the
chaos.
Chaos.
Yeah.
So this particular book is Coordinating the Chaos through Birth and Burnout. And so my boys now are 12, 9, and 6. And I wish I had this book when my oldest was like an infant, but you don't know until you know it, and then you teach others what you wish you knew. So in my soul's purpose, like I described earlier, my passion right now is just really reaching those moms who are on the verge of burnout. And the book really comes at it from the standpoint that, like, we need to, moms, I think ourselves, we need to put ourselves as a priority. If we're not taking care of ourselves, of course, there's nothing left in our cup to pour into our family's cups. And from the standpoint that moms are dealing with their own chaos, and then I don't know about you when you experience this, but I started removing myself from the equation of my own life after I had my first son. Didn't recognize that I was kind of in like a postpartum depression sort of scenario until it was like 2 years later. But once I started realizing that, I was like, yeah, I didn't care about my birthday. I didn't care about the holidays. All I cared about was being this image of some perfect mother that tended to her children. And that's not how we're the best parent that we can possibly be. The best parent that we can possibly be is by honoring and nurturing ourselves so that we can be the best version of us to be present for our growing kids. And so half the book is really centered around, hey mom, take care of you, because if you don't take care of you and make sure that you're happy, healthy, and thriving, your family's going to suffer. And then the second half of the book, I really get into a lot of holistic tips and tricks and strategies just to keep the baby, and child healthy in those first years or so of life. Now, as I'm sure you know, as I know, the chaos doesn't end after the first couple of years. So this book is probably not probably, it actually is the baby, so to speak, in a series. So I'm hoping to get the second one out, hopefully by the mid to end of next year.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on birthing the first of many.
Thanks. It's always a
Um,
progress.
yeah, and I love I know like self-care, self-love is kind of such an overused term that we almost forget what it means,
Hmm.
but it is literally one of the most important things in the world. And I think it means a lot of different things. Like what you just mentioned about like having to be this sort of cookie cutter persona, like look like I have my shit together all the time versus like really being authentic. Like, look, I got to take care of myself, which means I got to set boundaries, which
Hmm.
means I have to say no, which means I have to say this is what I believe and this is what I don't believe. I'm not actually going to participate in this part of society, but I am going to participate in that part of society. Like really authentically showing up exactly who you are and taking care of that. And that requires a lot of self-understanding.
Hmm. Which I think is never done, quite honestly. I feel like we're all evolving and always on a journey, you know, to an unknown place. And that concept of self-care, you're absolutely right. It's well overused now, but it's still so important. But it looks so different for every single person. You know, your self-care and self-love routine is probably very different than mine. But if we were to adopt each other's, it may not feel right for us, at least in this particular time. And so I'm just a proponent of getting to know yourself on the deepest level possible so that you can then make sure that you're doing everything to fill your cup and however that needs to be done.
Hell yeah, I love it. Thank you for advocating for that.
I can't not.
Well, is there anything else, like any like piece of advice or anything that you want to share with people about about either how to organize the chaos in their lives or about how to usher in sort of like this new paradigm of health?
Hmm. Good question. So, in ushering in the new paradigm of health, um, first, I would say step number one is really starting to get very deeply aware of yourself, of your childhood and your background and everything that could have impacted you in your journey. Then also recognizing that if you have kids, anything that you've experienced can impact your children in a generational, ancestral kind of way, energetically, especially if you're a mom, it passes through. Um, so aside from that, because that can go into a whole nother rabbit hole of the conversation. But in that first sense, really like when I meet with people in that first visit, you say, oh, you've got back pain, or you've got, headaches or whatever it is you come in with. We go through all the basic conversation of what could have impacted how, do you drink enough water? What's your diet like? All these basic things medically. But then I ask you, what was your mom's pregnancy like with you? What did she breastfeed you? And if so, for how long? Do you have siblings? Did you get along with them? What was your parents' relationship like growing up? Were there any traumas that you experienced either physically, mentally, and emotionally, whether you heard about them and don't remember them or you do consciously remember them? What were those kinds of things through your whole life? And then painting this picture and going back through. So I feel like we can all do this for ourselves, just going back and truly reflecting on the course and the journey of our own lives in all those different ways, right? Nutritionally, structurally, and physically, and then mentally and emotionally, how all those things impacted us. And then we can start to make connections and, oh, well, I'm manifesting this because I never got over these issues, and so on and so forth. So that to me is number one. I don't know if you thought on that before we could kind of go on.
No, that's beautiful. I love it.
Have you ever
Um,
heard of Louise Hay?
yeah, of course.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
she's like one of my, idols. I wish I would have met her. So
Mhm.
I use her work all the time. I have her little reference guide in my office, just in the simple recognizing of, oh, you're constipated. What aren't you letting go of? Like some of those things are so simplistic and obvious if we just think about it. But then otherwise, she was so brilliant in some of the connections that she was able to make that I love watching, okay, well, whatever you came in with and opening it up in her book and watching the patient's face go, okay, yeah, how did she know that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's real. The and that's when I come back to sort of the sacred geometry of the universe is that like the macrocosm is reflected in the microcosm and the future is reflected in the past and all of these things, is it's really profound. And again, it can be very practical, like looking at a book about constipation, or it can be really
Mm-hmm.
esoteric, powerful, spiritual. And
Right.
the cool thing about Louise Hay and her work is that she does both really, really, she navigates both worlds really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that all starts in the same place with is just that self-awareness piece
Mhm.
and being willing to look at it and see the good, bad, and the ugly.
Totally. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
No.
not labeling it as such, of course, because it's all just a part of who we are and a part of our journey.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's all the heroine's journey here.
Right?
The more chaos and strife we've had in our lives, not to say that it's necessarily a good thing, but the more that we've had in our lives, the more material we have to work with and to alchemize, and the more possibility for gold and diamonds if we can just see it that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I am always praying though for gentler lessons as I get older. Like, you know, I'm listening much more deeply now, universe, source, God. I'm listening much
Mm-hmm.
more deeply. My lessons can be gentler now. Thank you so much.
Yes, I've totally had those conversations with the universe where I'm like, okay, I got the lesson. We can be a little more gentler with the approach. I got it.
Thank you, thank you. Let's just move on now. I'm working on it.
Yeah.
Awesome. How can people find you and get to know you better? I know you're on Instagram. You've got a couple different websites. We'll put the links in the show notes, but if you want to share
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm everywhere on all the social media platforms. On Facebook, I believe I'm Christy Matusiak DC. On Instagram, it's Holistic Christy DC. And then my website is ChristyMatusiakDC.com. Just my first and last name at Gmail is just a way to get in touch with me if people wanted like one-on-one, like, hey, I heard something and it just, I have to know this or that, but the other thing, I'm happy to just email with people one-on-one if anybody's got any questions. But I wanted to run back to one other thing really quick before we end, because
Yeah,
you
go for it.
mentioned one other thing as far as tangible notes or strategies or tips or something. And anything that I tell anyone, I often reference the seven best doctors. And to me, they're so simple, but so impactful to just be sure that everyone knows, like, when you're trying to coordinate the chaos or alchemize the chaos in your own life, from whatever area you've got the chaos, follow, get the best quality and quantity of these seven things, and you're going to be light years ahead of where you are today. Those things are sun, fresh air, sleep, diet, exercise, water intake, and joy.
Mm,
Once again, so simple. And how often do we get all seven every single day? Sometimes it's a challenge
yeah,
because we are all, at the end of the day, we're all humans and we don't always get it right every single day.
that's a wonderful like piece of information to end this with. I love that. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. And may we all get all seven of those things today.
Yes.
Sending
I
you
know
all.
I always try.
I know, me too. I do. Thank you all so much for listening. And thank you, Dr. Christie, so much for being here.
Thank you, Sarah. Have a beautiful day.